All right. Where we at here? All these difficulties. All right, we're having the same difficulties I had yesterday, a couple days ago. All right, so everybody's watching. I'm Graham. Appreciate you guys tuning into this event. I've got some awesome people on the line with me, and we're going to talk about product and customer discovery and how startups are solving not just problems, but solving the right problems. There is this. So this is, I got Professor Peter Webley up in the top left, or maybe, I don't know. He's a professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Linda Janes, she's the director of gBeta here in Anchorage, which is the startup accelerator. Love to hear more about that. And Byam, who is the founder and CEO of Karta Solutions. Hello, everybody. Thank you.
Hello. Hey, Graham. Hi, all.
So I thought it'd be cool to get all of you guys together. I'm glad that we could to talk about like this, how startups solve the right problems. And like we were just talking about before we went live, like there's maybe two ways to solve a problem is that you have technology and then you go to try to find a problem to put that technology to, or a better way that we all know is that you find a problem and then go to try to find the solution to that. And a lot of times, I guess startups go through this process of they find a problem, they apply a new solution to it, but it may not always, their original idea doesn't always stay the same, right? Yeah. Jay, like, do you want to talk to us? Like, tell us what is Karta, man, and how did it come about?
Sure. Yeah, I won't tell the whole story, I guess, because that would take too long. But certainly, yeah, been a software startup here in Anchorage for the last few years. Essentially, we built a cloud platform to allow non-technical users to build out 3D virtual environments, all in the browser. So combining, 3D maps, GIS information, 3D models, things like that, with the ability to annotate and set up interactions. So heavy industry organizations can essentially use it to share, trainings and operational information across their whole organization, all organized in virtual environments.
Nice.
That's the spiel now, anyway. I mean, it's certainly come a long way throughout the various phases.
Could you tell us that? Like, where did
absolutely.
you start at the very beginning? Where did it start?
Yeah. So I I could pretend that I had this moment of revelation in which I saw a problem, and then you say, well, this problem needs a solution. I'm going to apply some technology. That that didn't really happen. I my background is in software development, and so worked on a lot of different sort of virtual reality and augmented reality and 3D based applications, moved more into web applications. And it was really out of one, I guess the final straw was a consulting gig that I was doing in which one use case required a tool that I did a bunch of research and simply could not find the software in the market for it. Now to say there's one use case, one client that needs this, I don't think that's enough really to jump into something new like this. Quit your normal job and start a startup. But there was so much I guess overlap and possibility that with one sort of solidified use case, within oil and gas specifically, I felt that with the intuition that it would be generalizable, jumped on it and just ran with it. And it's been over the last year and a half or so that there's been quite a bit of exploring and determining the language that needs to be used around these things when talking to other industries that aren't really from my own work history.
Yeah.
So Jay, what would you say, like, I guess I'm curious, when you were a contractor, I guess, what are some pain points that you specifically saw that needed this application? Like, why was that even needed, and what are like specific things that were just so painful to do without it?
For sure. Yeah. Mostly data availability and, knowledge transfer, essentially. So the really big problems, whether it's on the imagery and visualization side or it's on the, business intelligence side, everybody is aware of a year ago, we had a consultant come in and they, ran some numbers, and I watched their presentation. I think it was interesting. You say, well, where are those results? Or where is that information? Where is the study? They say, I think it's on, the internal network somewhere, and really everything just falls into that category. Is, where are those measurement numbers? It's in a folder somewhere. And so the big problem being, when the guy who was in charge of all of it retires, who knows where all that information is, and you're certainly not going to have quick availability to it. Even if you knew what you were looking for, you still not.
Jay, did you find Linda first, or did you meet Professor Peter Webley first?
Webley first. Yep.
Webley
so I went through the I-Core program through Center Ice, which then sort of led me into gBeta, with a very small gap in between those two programs for us.
Yeah.
Really, really nice stepping stones. Yeah.
I think it even goes, sorry, Jay, I think it even goes back to your time when you were based at UAF. I contacted you because there was something that you've been working on while you were based at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and then found, oh, by the way, this is Jay's email at the company, and we had a summer intern program, and said, hey, do you want to come in and talk to about getting an intern? He ended up with 2.5 interns. And then at the same time, the I-Core, our customer discovery training program, was running. So it really is, Alaska is this connecting point of 1 or 2 degrees of connection. And I think that Jay's an example of different stages of the journey that he's gone on with Karta Solutions. He's been able to tap into each different aspect, but he's also seen from his past experiences, there's this need, and then he's gone out and confirmed or clarified that there's more than the original industry that he was looking in. He's seen an opportunity that what he's developing, what Karta's developing, has a potentially ability to scale across multiple industries. Yeah,
for sure. And then so Jay, I guess going back to that, the problem that Peter's talking about, I guess what I was trying to get at earlier is you can think of it as pain points, right? But those are symptoms versus what is the actual problem, or thinking about it well, what is the job that needs to be done? And so how do you go about actually formulating, what the problem is between all of these things? Because things sometimes appear, certain problems just because they're symptoms. They're not actually that the disease or whatever that needs to get taken care of. So how did you go about that?
Yeah, I first of all completely agree, and I think that the diagnosis that I've come to really is that it's a data availability problem that is behind many business issues that are.
Yeah, I think you're breaking up a little bit.
Most of my diagnosis. Test. I can hear and see you guys. So
okay, we can hear you now. We can hear you. Yeah.
I'm back. Yeah, I was just going to say that most of my sort of diagnosis of the disease came from my time in consulting, sort of being on the vendor side for an organization, being on the organization side, working with vendors to try to advocate for the business users, and understanding that in each instantiation, I suppose, of treating a symptom. I like your analogy a lot, actually, and I think I'm going to steal it, Linda. Treating a symptom, you're realizing this is actually a more general problem, and if we could solve this general problem, it could be expanded across all of these instantiations. Who even knows what the benefit could be from there? Yeah.
And is that something that came to you right away? I guess it's not an obvious thing, because sometimes, a lot of times, you may think of symptoms and you just want to mask the symptoms. That's a current thing. Oh, we'll just patch it up here, patch it up there. At what point do you realize that there's a broader problem that actually requires a solution versus creating extra, like the good idea fairy or whatever, just doing stuff that's
Yeah.
not necessary.
That's a really good question, I think. And I think it stems, I mean, my desire for a generalizable solution, I think stems from the laziness of software developers for me. So I'm tired of solving the same problem in 20 different ways. I want to solve it once and then just continue to use this golden hammer essentially. And so I don't know if that's just the way I've been trained to think about things, but yeah, every, from the beginning, right out of college, looking at all these different projects, different issues, different ways of communicating information. Over time, it all just sort of bubbled into one solution. And then I said, well, I would like to build that solution. And it happened, I guess, that the technology and my own experience aligned for that to be possible. And so went for it. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of start at the genesis and then sort of move us forward a little bit. So you realized, okay, there is a data unavailability problem. So then how do you go from that to Karta, and how does the iCorp customer discovery fit into that process there?
Sure. I guess the big question that comes out of there's data availability. Let's take that for one. The question that comes out of that, then what would actually be the solution for this? How can we make these things more accessible to non-technical people? Because that's been a big part of it from the beginning as well. As sure, you can throw 100 data analysts at any problem, and they'll come up with a specific solution for you. But most organizations don't have 100 data analysts, and they don't want to pay for 100 data analysts. And so, really looking at how can we empower the actual business users to solve their own problems that really they're the only ones who are the subject matter experts on, instead of constantly having to interface with, experts like me in my previous, consulting life. Essentially looking at how we could solve the meta problem rather than just the individual problems. To be more specific, when
it's broken again.
Oh no, you guys aren't cutting out, so it must be my internet. Am I back?
You're
Okay, sorry guys. This is all a trick to give me time to what to say. I apologize for my connectivity, but I was just saying, working on different projects that were interactive 3D projects. There were so many overlaps between different projects, but each one was a specific custom build out where we rebuilt the interaction engine, we rebuilt the environment and rebuilt the user interface and all of it. And I just, again, constantly wanting to go back to how could we build one thing that would then generalize and solve all of these problems, make the information available no matter what the information is, no matter what the problem is, no matter what the business user is.
Can I,
that was the beginning.
Can I ask Linda and Peter, in your guys' experience, do you guys, well, first, could you each tell us what are the programs that you run? How do people get in? And what kind of companies, what kind of startups do you guys see? Because Jay being software, Linda, do you only see software companies come through gBeta?
No, not at all. We're really, so gBeta is an early stage, is an accelerator for early stage scalable companies here in Alaska, and we are industry agnostic or business model agnostic. So I work for a company called Generator. We're a venture capital fund, and the idea of gBeta, there's lots of gBetas in different markets, is to invest in communities best and brightest, right? So therefore we are really agnostic as to what kind of business you're starting, but there is a focus on scalability because that's kind of sort of our metric of success is for these businesses, and that's really what we focus on. We run 2 cohorts per year. We accept 5 companies each cohort. So there's some decision making that has to be done. More people apply than we can accept. But we accept companies from pre-revenue to post-revenue. Probably not necessarily in the idea stage. We would like to see some traction. We would like to see some communication with your potential customers, like participating in iCore that Center ICE offers, the customer discovery program. That's an awesome thing to do before gBeta, Jay, just like you did that. So we're looking for some sort of confirmations and, founder buy-in, skin in the game. Like we really want you to be committed to this problem. Not to say that you pivot or you decide it's not good after gBeta. That happens too. We can't predict that, but that's the idea.
Sure, that's interesting. Like, do you have any companies that just maybe don't exist after coming through the program? Do they realize? Because I think I read somewhere it was like 42% of startups fail because there was no market need.
Market need is a big one. So Jay will tell you we kind of hammer on that quite a bit, especially, you could have a market need maybe for a smaller business and you could still do well. But if you are going to ask for funding, there is kind of a specific formula that has to make sense for, whether it's angel investors and even more so for venture capitalists, that the market size needs to be a very certain amount. It's kind of like when you're talking about, is there a gap in the market and is there a market in the gap, right? You gotta look at both. Like you can't just be one or the other. It's gotta be both. So yeah, for sure, our market size is a big thing that we work on, and it's sometimes painful to really try to nail down what it is, and it's still an assumption, and it's kind of a hard number to come by, but it's an exercise that shows to customers and investors that the founder really has examined the market, understands the market, understands how it's growing, who the players are, what exactly their niche is in that market. So it's an important exercise to do, even though sometimes it feels like a futile exercise, but I promise it is not. Make you a lot more knowledgeable about the space you're playing in, which is very important.
Cool. And Gray, in answer to your question in terms of the different programmings, I think Linda highlights one where startups are on a particular journey in a particular direction. They're coming in at a particular time, and we at Center Ice connect with probably those in the earlier stage, but we also have programs that run parallel and provide additional capabilities to the benefits that Jay has seen from being connected to the gBeta network and the generator network. So we have projects spinning out of the university. So this is academic research that then develops into companies. The Innovation Core training program, and we have had teams from all different backgrounds, both external to the university, from the software side, but also from the sort of social entrepreneurial side, from the geoscience research, developing into technologies, biomedical. We have a summer-based studentship program called Students of Startups, where and Jay was another one that participated as a startups in that, where we're building up student resilience and what it's like to be out in the startup world, but also giving teams like Jay access to students that he wouldn't normally be able to get access to, because we support them from Center Ice, and then Jay works with them and his team works with them on particular projects. But they also get to see the life and day-to-day operations of a startup, developing a pitch for investors, going to an event, talking to people on the phone about new products, that sort of thing. So, and then the other one is we've just got a new project in called an SBR Bootcamp. So small business innovation research opportunities that are out there from the federal government, whether it's NSF, National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health, Department of Energy, there's Department of Education, there's lots and lots of these, and there's an opportunity for Alaskan startups to apply for these fundings. But it's how to be best prepared so you've got the higher chance of success. So what is the application process like? How do you write a proposal? Who needs to be on your team? How do you find an entrepreneur to join you if you're the expert? How do you develop your accounting setup such that there's a greater chance of bringing in this revenue into the state? With gBeta, it's the venture capital, it's about the investment in the company, but these SBIR and technology transfer, STTR opportunities are out there that companies like Jay's and others in Alaska could apply for, and there are those that have been successful, but there's an even greater opportunity that I think Alaskan startups could go for. And then you're really doing R&D development towards a commercialization success, and then you've got this demonstration that you've got stakeholders and a market opportunity, and then gBeta could be the next step after that to say, hey, here's the demonstration that we've done this R&D, that there's a need in this particular industry, there's a need in this particular gap in the market, and then we're now ready for investment. We at Senderice sort of have these different tracks, and it's really just getting in touch with us, knowing, sort of hearing about them on a newsletter, and then applying. We have some particular specifics for certain ones, just like Linda does for gBeta in terms of the gBeta Anchorage. But it's really, for startups listening in, either live or afterwards, it's just knowing where you are on your journey and then connecting into the relevant applicable program within the state. And you might go from the idea stage on the napkin all the way through to an investment, or you might come in because you've already done some development and move into a particular aspect of the programming, depending on where you're at.
And to be clear, that's available to anybody in the state, not just students of UAF.
The certain programmings are, the SBIR bootcamp is for businesses. Some aspects, we have some internal funding that is available to University of Alaska researchers, but the I-Core programming is open to those across Alaska. The students to startups can contact me and come to our Mixer event, which will be happening later in February. And then we connect them with students, and the startups basically get access to those students.
Cool.
And I would say too that, like, not just for gBeta, but other accelerators, you know, if a founder goes through a program where they've conducted customer discovery, like, that makes the founder so much more attractive to the accelerator, just because that's such an important part of, you know, of a company. That's like the foundation, right? Like, just so solving the right problems, hugely important. You know, whether you're gonna go the accelerator route or not is just hugely important. So you know, I'm a big fan of that, of not skipping that stuff.
No, and I think from my side, when you're doing those, and maybe Jay, you can talk about the connections you made, but it's really listening. It's sort of picking up the phone, having a Zoom now or in this virtual world, and just listening to them, somebody from an area that you're interested in tapping into, and asking them if they bring something up. It's like, well, why is that the problem? Oh, you said this. Well, why is that a problem? Because you're getting them to tell you their story of what is their issues they're seeing, because they'll bring something up in that discussion that you had never any idea about, because they see it every day, but you can never get that from an email. You can never get that without them telling you. So you're really there to listen and then get that information that helps you determine if what your value proposition is aligned with those stories you're hearing. But it's all about listening. And looks like Missy's brought something up. What was the track at ICE that was just mentioned? So there's a few of them, but the SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research Bootcamp, and then we have something called I-Core, which is the customer discovery program. So please do reach out to Alaska Senderice, and I'd be happy to follow up with you. And I'm also on LinkedIn as well. Thanks, Graham, for adding my info.
And so, Jay, like, what did you learn in customer discovery while you were going through that? Like, what were some of your assumptions that maybe, you know, were broken? Like, 'cause the idea is not just to validate, like, it's not like a convenient theory exercise type thing. Like, you actually want to get to the bottom of things. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I'd like to say that if there are startups listening in, you absolutely have to go through I-Core and gBeta. There's just nothing that has been, you know, more beneficial to us than the different programs that, like you say, if you're at that relevant stage to step into that, you get as much as you put in, you know, and you both are excellent at pushing the participants of the programs at getting as much, you know, out of it as possible. I really have appreciated the benefits of both those programs. But to speak to I-Core specifically, so my whole team is has technical backgrounds. So going through that process of talking to 25, you know, different people across industries that we deemed to be relevant, really revealed to me early on in our process that I was terrible at talking about what we were doing. That if you wanted to ask me about what software package we were using, you know, I could nerd out about it all day long. But that there was such a gap in our like I say, in our messaging about what we're up to, and being able to essentially very quickly not dumb it down, but condense it into something that's relevant to the specific person that I'm talking to. So as much as the iCore, the interviews, the customer discovery interviews were beneficial for us to, yes, validate, some of our really strong assumptions from the beginning. Also for us to, set aside certain sectors that we thought there might be something there, but, talking to 10 different people, it was like, no, not for now anyway, There was definitely those benefits, but I would say the overarching benefit for us was for me to realize that we had such a huge gap there. And I remember specifically, like I say, jumping from iCore straight into gBeta directly after that. That was the main thing that you helped us with, Linda, was, no, don't say it that way. That doesn't mean anything. That kind of a feedback was so helpful. And it's what we really needed. It's like when you say that word, what do you mean by that? And I would say, well, I don't even know. That's just what it's called. Stuff like that. So, really, really, really useful.
I love
Jay's
what you
trying to say that I'm very nice.
Exactly.
I love what you just said about that. You're very technical. Like your whole team is very technical and in depth. Linda, Peter, do you guys have any experience with non-technical founders coming in? Like they don't necessarily, maybe they have a software product, but they don't know how to build software, or they don't have anything like that.
From my side, it's sometimes people come with an idea that they may not be an expert in it, but they're seeing a pain because they're interacting with something every day. So it becomes that ideation stage. It's like, I'm seeing this problem. I'm coming from a liberal arts background, or I'm coming from let's say physical geography background, but I'm seeing this computer science problem every day in the software that I use.
Yeah.
But how do I fix it? Well, that's where the network that we're all part of, all four of us are part of, is like, well, how do we find somebody that can talk to that person? So let's say, for example, a geographer came to me and said, I'm using this software and all of these things aren't working. Well, I probably, first of all, go and find somebody in our computer science department who's a technical expert. And if they're not available, I might give Jay a call or send him a message that, hey, do you know somebody in Alaska that's working in this area? So what you do is you partner the person that sees the problem with a subject matter expert, somebody that's in the area, and they could become a mentor. They could be, if you go for these SBIR opportunities, they could become the technical lead, and the ideator is the entrepreneurial lead, because they're the one that brought the idea to the table. So then you get this partnership early on. They can then go through trainings. And then you've got the technical plus the ideator. And then you might bring in somebody that can put together the package that Jay ended up working on with Linda's team, to sort of say, this is the message of how you present the solution that you're developing. But it's really, we're within Alaska, within the ecosystem in Alaska, if we don't know the person to connect with, we probably know somebody that knows the person. So if rather than sort of thinking, oh, I'm going to sit on my own and try and solve this, just get in touch with somebody through one of these events like you've got here, or go and find a group on LinkedIn, or connect up with a startups group in one of the other social media platforms, because more than likely there's somebody that might be an expert in the area that you're seeing a problem in.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for non-technical founders, because if you're not able to build a product, it's a little hard to do any kind of even customer discovery, because some of the best customer discovery, honestly, is like very early in your product, right? I mean, nothing beats like showing it to your customer and be like, well, what do you think? And then kind of going from there, because like Graham, you said earlier, surveys can only do so much, especially people who are not using it. If you're not using something, you could be completely on two separate pages with what you're describing this thing to be, right? Like, or not addressing the actual need. Not addressing the job to be done. So it's great to get some kind of an early prototype. Now, that doesn't mean that you need a technical person for an early prototype. I want to kind of like stress that you don't need to hire an amazing developer for your early. In fact, you probably shouldn't. You should figure out how to do it in a very non-technical way to test that very, very early stage solution that you have. But eventually you will need one, and it's hard for people to invest in a company that doesn't have a technical lead, just because it can be very expensive. And if you have to pay somebody out of pocket, you really don't know what that cost is going to be. And there's no, there's no skin in the game. And it can just, that cost overrun can get out of control. And not just cost overrun, but like, hey, you solved a symptom, you didn't solve a problem. We need to go back to the board, start from scratch, like that costs a lot of money if that person is not on your team and is not incentivized properly, which, pretty much with equity. So I'd say you don't need them right away, but you do need them. And so, but that's part of being able to build a team, right? That's part of being able to be an entrepreneur. If you can't secure somebody that's technical, eventually find them, there's some kind of an issue there to begin with. I'd say a good example would be in the last gBeta cohort, we had Erin McKay with Evergreen Compliance. She's not a technical person, but she did eventually find one, and he is now part of the team. And it's working really well for them, and I'm really happy. I can definitely see that and this is what I told her when she was accepted to gBeta. I said, you now have capacity, to take off, because you have this person, you have this idea, you've built it this far, you've started testing with the company. So now the gBeta can really help you, because you can actually move forward now. Before it was a little bit harder to do that. And so there wasn't as much capacity to kind of light her up, and send her flying. So that's important.
I love that.
To speak to that a little bit really quick, to, I guess, sing Erin's praises for that. I think she was very, very successful in not sort of, clutching her pearls or whatever the term in terms of her idea, and I must retain 100% of this equity. Whenever you need to bring, a CTO type partner on, you have to incentivize them. And actually, give them some ownership. And she was very willing to do that with the guy she found. And I agree. I think it's a perfect fit for her. So
it's awesome. I love what you were saying, Al, about building a prototype and taking it to the customer. And I've taken prototypes forward. Like I've built things in Adobe XD, which is also still a little more technical. But some of the best things that I've built out are just on PowerPoint. I just need to make it look like something, before I show it. And then that's really low. It didn't cost me a lot. I don't have a huge investment. If it's a wash, it's a wash, and that's good. And then I was thinking about the no code stuff. That's so, because everybody's doing no code now. There's Bubble, there's Glide, there's, Microsoft has their Power App seat, and Salesforce, and all these options. There's all kinds of, MIT released an open source one. What is it? I'm going to have to remember it and drop it in the comments, but you can build your own app in 5 minutes without any code. Anybody can do it, and you can host it from their site and use it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking how far are we from seeing more people who have no technical background, but they just start with no code and go.
Yeah. And I would say, Graham, even going before that and saying, how can I make this process manual just so that I can interact with my customers? Because if you have an app, a lot of times you're not really seeing what their workflow is like. How do you fit into their workflow? What exactly do they need? But if you can make it manual in the beginning and test that, from then you can start sort of scaling, because otherwise it's you're scaling. What exactly you're scaling? You don't have a thing that that is needed, and it's the right package, and it's the right experience, and it's the right everything. What exactly then are you trying to scale? You don't know that, right? So it's just kind of a waste of time and money situation that comes in.
It really comes down to, if you've got an idea, just get out there and talk to people. Get out there and talk and listen, because that's when you might find the technical person, because it's the person you called on that particular day. Whenever you see you hear about things called startup weekends. It's really, you get together with team and you just get out the door. You don't stay in the room that the event's happening in. It's virtually get out there. So call people or walk out the door and walk down the street and start talking to people, because who knows who you'll meet. So obviously people will be thinking, well, idea protection, and obviously you can and evaluate sort of how much information you want to give out. But often unless you go and talk to somebody, it still becomes that minimum viable product sitting on your computer in your office or on your in your house that never actually gets to see the light of day. So sometimes that and often that's sometimes the hardest for people, is to get that. I'm getting out the door and I'm going to go, and I'm not going to talk to I'm not going to do the mum test. I'm not going to go and say, hey mum, what's this like? It's like, oh, that's wonderful. But it's actually getting out there and talking to somebody you don't know, or just opening the door. And like for me, I'm on the university, opening the door, wandering across campus and talking to the person who's working behind the coffee stand. That's somebody I have no idea about. Or knocking on a door of a faculty member and saying, hey, you've got 5 minutes to talk to me. Or wandering down Fifth Avenue in Anchorage and just chatting to somebody. And that's the sort of discovery process, but it can just be idea discovery rather than I'm going to find a customer that wants to buy that product. It's discovering and finding collaborators, and that's an aspect of the early stage process that Linda was highlighting. It's really just get out and talk to people, because otherwise it'll still be that product that you never really pursued sitting on your computer.
That's terrific.
Yeah,
And
I like it, Peter. That reminds me of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jay. All right, go ahead.
Real quick. I was going to say, if what Peter just said sounds like your worst nightmare, then partner with someone who is okay with talking to people. That's all I would say. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
yes.
There you go.
Find the extrovert.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Just to kind of echo on that, Peter, it reminds me of I don't remember. I think it was a couple years ago at the Junior Economic Development Innovation Summit. They invited one of their keynote speakers, and he was talking about sort of like I'm going to paraphrase this. I don't remember exactly the terms he used, but it's sort of like the pulse of innovation. You know, you think of an idea, right? You're sort of like tunnel vision. You're like this. You're kind of head down. You're working on it, but then what you need to do is open back up sooner than later.
Yeah.
Right, and expose it to people, talk to people, etc. Get ideas, get all that, throw it all in your bag again. Then again, close back up, go do your thing, then open back up. So it's kind of like this, almost like this heartbeat that ends up happening. That way you're not just in your own tunnel vision, and not just like even people, but it allows you to sort of like, this is a different podcast, I'm switching topics now, allows you to like see the trade winds, right? Because when you're here, you're super close, you're focused, that's great too. But like you need to lift your head up, put it on a swivel. Yeah. What are the trade winds? What is the opportunity? Why should I do this right now? Why should people care about it right now?
Right,
that's
exactly.
kind of both.
Yeah. Another term I've heard is like the double diamond effect, where you sort of narrow in and then go out, narrow in, go out, narrow in, go out. And you can even do this inside a business. Let's say, for example, take Jay, you've got a person in a particular division, they've got an idea. It's like, well, let's come and present it to the whole team. And then you see people listening into particular areas, and then you find actually if you tweak it over here, you can go in a new direction. And then they go and focus in their division and then bring it back to the team. So giving these sort of half day of ideation sort of phases where people just bring an idea to the table and say, hey, let's just talk about it. And that can become the next big product that you develop, because they've been working on it in the background while they've been doing their regular projects. And I think the same is in the startup ideation world, can also happen internally to a business as well. This sort of focus, open to everybody, focus, open to everybody. And eventually you find that next big product that becomes your next big push and promotion out.
For sure.
So on this, like diverge and converge, or go out and find and then come back in and scope down and look. Do either one of you guys have experience, or any of you guys have experience with a startup coming in with one idea and then completely go in a different direction? They stay in the program, but their idea completely changes and they do something else.
Not in my programming, but I see it a lot in startup weekends, where people come in. So these are like 54-hour long, quick-paced. You come in with an initial idea, and then you find team members. And often the final pitched idea probably is very different to the original idea 54 hours earlier, because you're going out and going, oh, we've got this cool idea. Let's go and talk to somebody. Oh, no, but they said something in the conversations that we now want to go in another direction. So within 54 hours, you come in with one idea and you probably end up with a completely different business at the end of it. And that becomes the business, or you find a team member that's got a particular skill set. So that can happen quite a bit, especially at the very beginning stage. But I've not directly in terms of any of our programming But I've definitely seen it in these fast-paced 54-hour weekend events where one idea gets presented and then the team at the end, it's a completely different idea because they've gone and spoken to people outside the room.
Yeah, I haven't seen any in gBeta Anchorage thus far, but I know other gBeta directors throughout the country have.
Yeah.
They've told me about it. Or like if we're running, Peter, you and I were talking yesterday, or the day before, G-Alphas, which is like
Right.
the very early stage, you know, or venture studios, then yeah, you know, all day long.
I was reading an article one time about I think it was like a music production software company, and by the time they were about halfway through their accelerator program, they were a baby food company, and they completed and they grew, they scaled, and they did awesome, and they're doing awesome right now. But it's just so funny, like, to read that. How did you shift from that to that?
For example,
found
actually,
a problem.
Yeah, something on that. We are streaming to YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube was not originally YouTube. It was something completely different, but then they found a market for people. I think that was the music thing. It was a music-based online thing, and they become YouTube. And we're streaming to it, but they saw this need for people wanting to watch online videos and get content, but that was not their original plan.
Yeah.
And we now know the size of YouTube. So
there you go.
I want to say I was literally thinking of that example. I think you're talking about exactly what I'm thinking about. I just can't remember what it was. And was it like dating or something? I can't. But
yeah, it was like it was something that was, it was online video content that became what we are now streaming to, but that was never the original. They just saw this huge market opportunity and switched quickly and got onto that track. And I'm sure if you do, people listening online, if you go and do other searches, you can probably see other stories of startups that where they got to and became the sort of size that they are, what their original presentation was on, and what their original idea was that led to the final big venture investment or the big IPO was not what it originally was.
Yeah, and I think you gotta go with the flow. You really do. Yeah.
And you've got to have sorry, Graham, you've got to have the ability, and I think you highlighted it, Jay highlighted, you've got to have the ability to be open to that. You've got to have the ability to say, okay, my original idea was not where it's going to go. I've got the ability to adapt. I want to move in the direction where there's this opportunity to gain some growth, and it may not be exactly what I wanted, so I've got to let things drop to the side. I've got to let things go. I can't hold on to them, because otherwise you'll hold yourself back and you won't get to where you could get to. And I that's a real critical component of the entrepreneurial sort of startup approaches. Be prepared to leave a few things by the side as you're growing, because what you thought about 18 months ago is not where you may end up being.
Yeah, and I think for that reason, like, customer discovery is not just a check the block kind of, go through the motions. You really have to be open. And then I think you have to also, instead of just thinking about it like linearly, I was reading a Medium article and I really loved what they said. It's like, really think about it in abstract ways, like maybe use the 5 whys or the first principles thinking of like just getting to the bottom of things, because you are going to discover something you haven't thought about it, versus like, problem solution. It's so linear. You may not, you just really need to open your mind up to what this could be, right? And so you're literally in discovery. You're not in validation of anything. You're like in discovery. Yeah,
exactly.
That's so cool. Jay, if you if there's a startup founder or future founder listening right now, and you were going to give them a piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh man, it's going to be stinking hard. Honestly, if I would have known how difficult it was going to be, I don't know if I would have done it, and maybe that's not what I'm supposed to say, but it really is the hardest, professional thing I've ever done. The amount of work, the amount of ownership, the amount of lost sleep, but I would say my piece of advice is, if you believe it's an idea worth, leaving else behind for, to actually do it, if you're in a position to do it, to actually give it your all. I know maybe that's pretty high level, but other than that, take advantage of all the great programs that exist. And there's in terms of gathering investment as well. I've heard someone say before that there's a big bag of money with your name on it somewhere out there. And you just have to, try hard enough to find it. So.
Linda, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, and then one last piece I would say is I agree with everything that was just said about widening your perspective and your view in order to take in, in order to rediscover what a solution might be. But the narrowing in is just as important, because then you'll never actually do anything if you don't put your blinders on, and sit down and actually put something together. I see so many people who, and I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but they call themselves entrepreneurs, but really all they ever do is talk about stuff, and they've never actually narrow in and do it, and so I would encourage that attitude as well.
That would be my thing, is like really focus on execution, focus on moving, focus on building something early on. It doesn't have to be technical, just so you can see what the feedback is like, and yeah, I mean, it's in one of the other books, it's like, it's not how you start, it's how you end up, right? So just get moving. Don't worry about the beginning. The beginning is going to be rough and bumps and everything else and crises, and whatnot. But overall, I think it's a exhilarating and fun experience, and you can
so worth it.
A lot of
it's
very much so worth it. You're gonna get the kind of experience you're not gonna pick up at school. Okay, so I don't care if you have an MBA or whatever. It's just, this is the kind of stuff that you're just gonna walk away with so much personal development. Incredible.
Yeah, I guess Graham, completely agree with both of those. But the other one is listening. Listen to feedback, absorb feedback, because often it's something that you may not have thought of, and actually you can evaluate afterwards and sort of not get in the conflict while you're hearing it. So listening, and really just getting out the door and talking, and because otherwise it will just stay as that file on your hard drive or that idea in a notebook. Sometimes it's, as Jay points out, it is a hard process, and you highlighted earlier about the number of percentages of startups that fail. That's because the other percentage has been successful, and it's taken those get out there, it's taken those hard nights, it's taken those worrying weekends, it's taken those listening to people, it's taken those, I took that step that was really hard. It's the really hard step, not the really easy step. And those are the ones that eventually become the successes, because it's the hard graft of people like Jay and other businesses out there that actually become successful because of the work you get out what you put in. So
that's awesome. Well, let me see if I can summarize all that. So from the beginning, we talked about startups have this unique opportunity, this unique challenge of creating a new opportunity that solves a problem. And they do that by finding something that's unworkable, unavoidable, urgent, and underserved. They throw a bunch of their own mental and physical resources at it until they wind up with an idea that's hopefully scalable and perfect to fit their customers' needs. But like Linda said, you don't get there without finding what jobs need to be done. And like Jay said, without finding a problem that doesn't have a solution yet, finding those pains. We've talked about this today, like finding the pains. If you find the pains, you'll find the problem, and you maybe wind up with something that you can throw at it that solves it. This has been a fantastic talk about getting with possible future customers, validating all that, and building what you need. Thank you guys so much for coming on and doing this with me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Graham.
I enjoyed it too. Yeah, thanks for setting it up.
Yeah, this is great.
Thank you. Nice to see you guys.
Me too. All right. If you guys want to hang out, thank you everybody for listening.